enlisted in the Army out of patriotism. Ever since I was young, I always wanted to serve my country and serve in the military.
I always had toys. I always reenacted little battles in my backyard.
I felt a drive or a need to go serve. Something that, less than 1% of the country raises their hand and says, hey, I want to go do that.
I actually came here in 8th grade and saw Changing of the Guard. I had no expectations of being a sentinel at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. I enlisted in infantry. I expected to go to a regular infantry unit. And once I got the opportunity to come to the Old Guard and I knew that the Tomb was a part of it, I immediately decided that that's something I wanted to do.
I came down here for a Changing of the Guard one day, and I came and I seen that this was something that I wanted to do. I knew this was bigger than myself. I knew that I would serve a purpose here.
Down here at the Tomb, you usually go through 6 to 9 months of training. It's self-paced, so depending on how well you learn your knowledge or how fast you learn your knowledge, how well you can learn to put together a uniform, all the measurements on the uniform are within 1/64 of an inch.
You learn to shine your shoes with kiwi and water. You also build every single thing that's on your uniform.
And then as well as, outside portion, learning how to do the weapons inspection or learning how to walk, keeping everything within a 21-second count.
The unknowns gave everything they had for us, so we believe that it's the least we can do to demand perfection out of ourselves when we're honoring them.
What we do down here means a lot to a lot of people, and we carry that on ourselves a lot. We know what we do, and we strive to be perfect just because of it.
Perfection is our standard, and knowing in the back of my mind that that's an unattainable goal. But you want to get as close to it as you can.
You work 24-hour shifts. When you're out there at 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, it can get pretty trying. You have to stay awake and walk around, and you can get real cold or you can get real hot. So you have to really dig deep and find that motivation.
I stood guard during Hurricane Irene. I remember just standing there. I could feel the wind just pushing. Like every time we would change shoulders, I could feel that wind was trying to take that weapon from me. But as long as you stood there and knew what you were trained to do.
This is crazy. I got trees blowing around to my left and right, and I'm standing here, and then that's when you got to dig deep and remember why you're standing there.
You have that humbleness instilled in you that you want to do the job no matter the conditions, because those unknowns gave their life, and the little you could give to them is the fact that you can stand out there and take a little bit of discomfort. I had a buddy that just lost his life in Afghanistan a week ago. I first got the news, it hadn't settled in, but it made me that day especially, my drive, my motivation to do what I do here really stood out, and I knew that if anything I could do it for him because he was a very close friend of mine. And I don't know every soldier, but I know every soldier gives every single thing they've got to do this job that we do, and it means something to me.
Currently, the Tomb says known but to God, because that's where they, who they're known to by right now, because we don't know who they are. But I'm hoping someday when I pass on, many years from now, that I'll get to know their names. I think a lot of people look at more material objects in life than they do what you've done and what you've accomplished. And it isn't really like what you've accomplished as far as you don't have to be, a big rock star or a football player, but just be who you are. The fact that you can go out there and touch someone's life, or you can go out there and just with a simple change of a guard, you can inspire somebody or touch somebody emotionally and know that you've connected. At one point you had to step out from being a kid. You couldn't be, underneath mom and dad's wing anymore. You eventually had to be your own self, and the military has definitely helped me mature and develop myself into the man. And like I said, every day I'm getting challenged more and more, and hopefully I'm doing a good job becoming a good man. I feel I am. The Sentinel's Creed.
My dedication to this sacred duty is total and wholehearted.
In the responsibility bestowed on me, never will I falter.
And with dignity and perseverance, my standard will remain perfection.
Through the years of diligence and praise and the discomfort of the elements,
I will walk my tour in humble reverence.
To the best of my ability. It is he who commands the respect I protect, his bravery that made us so proud.
Surrounded by well-meaning crowds by day, alone in the thoughtful peace of night,
This soldier
will in honor glory rest under my eternal vigilance.
You know, seeing all these trees that are cut down out here reminds me of another tree that I cut down. Barbara and I live on a beautiful ridge that overlooks a lake where we enjoy beautiful sunsets almost every night. And there were some trees on my property that were beginning to take away our view. With my son in tow, I began to take my chainsaw and go drop a few of those trees and regain our view. But there was this one tree, and I went down and looked, and our property butts up to a green belt around a lake. And I thought, you know, these property lines down here are not that exact. So I took my son down there and we cut that tree down. And when I went back up on the deck and looked out over the view, all I could see was the monument to my compromise. I'd like to tell you that I immediately called the city and offered to pay him for that tree. I didn't. It took me 4 months to do that. It was after I read the Bible a number of times, and every time I'd read the Bible, all I'd see is trees. I made sure my son was present, and I called the city and admitted what I'd done, offered to make restitution. And the guy on the other end of the phone was really cool. He said, you know, Mr. Rainey, it's okay. And afterward, I got down on one knee and I looked my son in the eye and I kind of put my hand on his shoulder and I said, son, I want you to remember that your dad wasn't perfect, but when he was wrong, he admitted it and he did the right thing. You're going to be tempted to do the wrong thing over your lifetime. I have. I've been tempted to be arrogant, selfish, to get even, to be angry, to lie, cheat, steal. I've even been tempted to be unfaithful to my wife, in thought or in deed. Regardless, as a man, you need to do the right thing. There are 3 things that motivate me to do the right thing, and they're found in 2 Corinthians chapter 5. In that passage, Paul speaks of the fear of God, the love of God, and the rewards of God. All 3 motivate me to do what's right and to not give in to a temptation. Those sentinels who guard the tomb of the unknown, those guys stand guard in intense heat, bitter cold, rain, hurricanes, and also the dark of night. They're doing their duty when no one's watching. That's where real character comes out. I want to challenge you as a man to stand firm, to step up and choose the right thing. And when you don't and you fail, admit it and make things right.
It's time to recognize another inductee into the Unmanly Hall of Fame.
Don't move. I promise I will not miss. Francis, I'm beginning to think this is a bad idea. Hold still. Francis. Prepare the unicycle! It's wild time. It's wild time. Here we go!
Congratulations, Chris Walker, for not knowing when to stand firm and when to duck and run. We salute you as the newest member of the Unmanly Hall of Fame. This award is being presented posthumously.
It's pretty rare to find someone who will stick to his or her post these days. Our culture is definitely going in the opposite direction of character development, of conscience, the cultivation of a conscience, and of virtue, good virtue. There has been a perception that, and I had this perception as a younger Christian, that Christian character was effeminate, and that if you were a man, then you weren't interested in things like love, joy, and peace, but being tough and rugged and clever and conniving perhaps, and that you only showed virtue of kindness, that kind of love or attention, tenderness to women and children, but not to other men. I think that that is probably a lie of our culture. Undoubtedly, character is formed in a family context. I remember hearing Chuck Swindoll years ago say something like, family is where life makes up its mind. I thought that was a good phrase. I think whatever is first poured into a child is what that child is going to live out. There was a great saying by the Roman orator Cicero. He said that new vessels will long retain the taste of that which is first poured into them. I will confess myself that I used to cheat on exams in elementary school, and I felt rather guilty about it. I don't know what it was. I don't think it was necessarily the fear of God, but I think it was the fear of my father. I'm pretty convinced that in terms of character formation or the cultivation of virtues, that it really is the grace of God. That's not to say, of course, that the human will is not involved. There's a passage in Philippians chapter 2. It says that God is at work in you both to will and to work for His good pleasure. But right before that it says, work out your own salvation or sanctification with fear and trembling.
Ben, what are you doing with the power drill?
Building a go-kart.
Oh, good. Tell you what. Don't build the go-kart today, and I'll help you build it tomorrow.
But I really...
Yeah, it'll be Saturday. We go to Home Depot, buy some parts, maybe even grab a milkshake while we're out, huh? Just don't build it without me.
Tomorrow?
I promise. Bill!
Buddy!
What's up, my man?
I'm at the water cooler. Where you at? Yeah, okay, so just thought you should know, Pam and the kids are spending the weekend with their parents, so I have an extra ticket for the Final Four game tomorrow if you're interested.
Oh, man, of course I'm interested. But I don't know if I can go. I promised my son I'd help him build his go-kart tomorrow, and he looks pretty excited about it.
Just push it one weekend. You'll understand. It's the Final Four we're talking about.
I know what she's gonna say. Your schedule? He's been dying to do something like this with you. I know, but this is a once in a life. You made a promise. I know I made a promise, but what are you gonna tell your son? I'm gonna tell him Hey, Sugar.
Hey.
How's your day?
Good.
Good. What kind of flag are you making?
That's my pirate flag.
Yeah, you need one of those. Hey, listen. I'm not gonna be able to help you out tomorrow with the go-kart. I got this big game I gotta go to. And I promise I'll help you build it next week, okay? I promise. Yeah, sorry, bud. But trust me. Understand when you get a little bit older. Yeah, lot B. Yeah, about a half hour. Okay.
I was a pretty good football player when I was a kid, but I was what we call a game day player. I didn't want to practice. And I remember the coach would get on me and I'd say, I'll be fine for the game, don't worry. And most of the time I was. He said, you know, you just don't understand. He said, you may be fine for the game. He said, but my purpose in doing this all week is so you don't have to think about being fine or not. You don't have to think about what it is you're doing. It's part of you. And that's what we do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So when you get out there Saturday or Friday night, it just comes. You don't have to think about it. I learned that lesson from the coach, but it's one I still regret that I don't think I learned it well enough. I still don't practice as much as I should in terms of things. I know, you know, I've got something to do and some study, and I do it 80%. I don't do it 100%. I know because I'm married to a person who does it 100%. When you live with someone who does it 100%, if you only do 80%, you're embarrassed all the time. Aristotle said, and I think modern psychology confirms it, and I think the Wizard of Westwood, John Wooden, one of the great coaches of all time, confirms it. It takes habit, precept, that is lessons, habits, lessons, and example. And I think if you habituate people to certain kinds of behavior, if you let them know what the rules are, and if you let them see them working out in their lives, you can point to that people and say, that person's doing it right, this person's doing it right. That, I think, is how you do it. The other way, of course, is to hold people to those standards. I mean, the single best way, I believe, you teach a young person responsibility is to hold them responsible. You want to know what it means? This is what it means. You were supposed to do that. You didn't, so you're getting docked. The reason I mentioned John Wooden is he was a great coach, great man, too. But his teaching method kind of made a comeback. He said there was nothing quite like moving the ball up and down the court. You know, you just got to do it about 1 million times. And he was right about that. Malcolm Gladwell in his book pointed out the same thing, practice. And this is what Aristotle meant by habit. There's a great story in The Moral Compass. This dad is trying to teach his son about doing the right thing. Every time the kid does something wrong, the dad goes to the post outside his house, big post where they used to hitch horses. And he takes his knife and carves a little notch. And one day the boy walks out there, he sees about 40 notches. He says, Dad, have I been that bad? And his dad says, yeah. He says, well, I want to be better. And he says, for every week that I don't do anything seriously wrong, I want you to fill one of those notches. At the end of the year, all the notches are filled. And the boy feels pretty good, and he goes out and he looks, he comes back in, he's still crying. The dad says, why are you crying? They're all filled. He said, but I can see the scars. He said, that's right. Yes, you can. There's a price. We pay price for things we do. And you don't know that when you're 20. You know it when you're 40. You know when you're 50. You know when you're 60. But there's always time to be a better man. I remember Justice Holmes, somebody I read a lot about, Justice of the Supreme Court. He was 90 years old, and one of his former clerks came over to see him. And the man was sitting there in the corner reading, starting a book, 600-page book, and the The guy said, "You may not even get to finish that book, sir. You're 90 years old." He said, "Why are you reading that?" He said, "To improve my mind, to improve my mind." So keep at it.
Show yourself.
Show yourself. Show yourself. Show yourself.
In all respects.
In all respects.
To be a model.
To be a model.
Of good works.
Of good works.
And in your teaching.
And in your teaching.
Show integrity.
Integrity.
Dignity. And sound speech. That cannot be condemned. So that an opponent can be put to shame. Having nothing evil to say about us.
We face a culture that doesn't want to be told that there is one Savior and one way to know God and be reconciled to God. And so in all these different moments, standing up against the enemies of God, like Joshua did in days of old, requires that courage to say, I care more about the glory of God and obeying the one true God than I do peace, comfort, and the approval of men.
Even as a young kid, there was always access. Found a magazine under my dad's bed, and I hated myself. But the moment I saw it, heart starts beating fast, overwhelmed with curiosity. That's where the struggle, that's where it started. Because I didn't have a relationship with the Lord, it made it very easy for me to feed this new thing. I was a sophomore, I was 19 years old, started college pretty early, and a girl invited me to Campus Crusade. They were trying to, reach me for Jesus, and it just started to come together. I would love to say that everything changed.
He had crooked teeth, and he did not dress well, so that really wasn't it. What are you gonna do after college? And he said, thinking about going to seminary. That was like the moment that I thought, okay, I gotta, something's gonna happen here. I really like him.
Marriage is one of those crazy things that you have all these ideals of what it's supposed to be like.
The first year was dreadful.
Wow, is it gonna be this hard? It becomes very easy to then go look at magazines.
I do remember a couple of occasions where I came home from work or something, and I would walk in and there was an image there that he couldn't get off the screen fast enough.
So it went from looking at images to chatting, having an interaction with this girl, and she said, "You want to meet?" I will never forget driving home. I had broken my promise. I can never go back and say that I kept my vow. I hated myself. I hated what I was doing to the name of Christ. And that led to about a 2.5-year period of time where I was physically unfaithful to my wife.
I just assumed that my husband, my worship leader, youth pastor husband, was walking and in full integrity.
A lot of my walk with God was a show. I met Craig Rochelle, who's the senior pastor at Life Church. A year later, he calls me up. The idea of moving to Oklahoma City, not appealing at all, but I legitimately thought that this was God's do-over for me. I'm sitting in a staff meeting, and Craig made a statement. He said, our private lives are what give us the opportunity to minister publicly.
That Tuesday morning, February the 19th, 2002, the door opens like 9:30 in the morning, and I come around the corner and he says,
"Honey, we've got to talk."
He just starts telling me the most awful things you can ever imagine hearing from your spouse. One minute I'm unpacking boxes, and 60 seconds later I'm wanting to die.
I felt that at the time. There's no other way than to get completely honest.
He looked at me and he said, I know you'll never trust me again. He said, but if you'll let me, I'll spend the rest of my life trying to earn it back. And that was 10 years ago. Nothing is off limits for me. His life is an open book, and thankfully because of that, God has allowed me to have trust in a man again that I never thought I would.
I am, to this day, completely free. I am not fixed, but I am not the same guy. God has set me free.
I remember when I was in my 30s, a young lady called and asked for some counsel, came to my office, and I remember distinctly my eyes meeting her eyes and something within me telling me don't look any lower than her face as she began to cross her legs in what must have been a suggestive way. I found out later she wasn't coming for counsel. She was there to trap me morally and take me down. As a man, you need to know this. You're going to get hit. Life is full of temptations, all disguised as small choices. Remember 1 Corinthians 16? Be watchful. Stand firm in the faith. Act like men. Be strong. Let all that you do be done in love. I want to charge you with doing your duty, just like the guards do at the tomb of the unknown soldier. 24/7, 365, do your duty. Do what's expected. And then be watchful. Stand firm in the faith, establish your convictions, and live by them. And when you fail, get back up and keep stepping up and being the man.